Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today I'm delighted to welcome a woman whose rich, powerful, soulful voice has been captivating audiences all over the world for over 50 years. She became a global superstar in 1970 with her massive hit, Band of Gold, which earned her her first gold record. She's recorded 26 albums, appeared in movies, hosted her own TV talk show, and starred in stage productions, including most recently Ella, First Lady of Song. She's been inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame and the Soul Music Hall of Fame 3 times. And most recently, she's released a new album called Let There Be Love, a collection of duets with iconic vocalists, including the legendary Johnny Mathis. She is the fabulous Freda Payne. Freda, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Harvey. It's indeed a pleasure to be with you and having an interview with you.
You are yet another brilliant musical artist who came out of Detroit. What is it about that town that produced so much musical genius?
Well, all I could say is that I remember a lot of the talent, especially the people of African American lineage. They migrated from the South. People came to Detroit looking for work, looking for jobs. And you had Ford Motor Company, you had General Motors, Chrysler, Cadillac, Dodge. And I remember as a little girl growing up, all the men in my family, my grandfather, my uncles, my dad, they all worked for General Motors, Ford's, Chrysler, one of those companies. And I think the talent it's just because I guess it's the Midwest and they all kind of migrated into that pool, that area, that designated section of the country. Of course, there are people from other cities as well. Chicago, talent comes from everywhere. But I know what you're saying is that some major artists have come or who were born and reared basically came out of Detroit. Yeah, you're right.
Freda, who were your musical influences growing up?
Of course, Ella Fitzgerald, who have a very close relationship with in terms of artistically, because I perform as Ella in a stage play. By the way, I've done that 3 times. It's called Ella Fitzgerald, First Lady of Song. And then I also do Ella Fitzgerald tributes, like one-woman show. I also admired Judy Garland. I admired Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, Gloria Lynn, and Edie Gourmet.
Oh, she was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're so well known as an R&B singer because of Band of Gold that many people may not realize that your musical roots were in jazz and that jazz is your first love, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I started out as a teenager singing jazz. I was a fan of jazz music when I was just like 13 years old. Maybe it started when I was 12, because that's the music that I used to listen to at night when I would supposedly be going to bed. I remember I had a radio that was right up above my head, and there was a little tiny radio, and I would turn it on and I would listen to it. And there was a station where they played like Chet Baker, sometimes Judy Garland, Julie London,
Billie Holiday.
Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. They played Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Chris Connor, June Christie. These were Gloria Lynn, and so my ears were in tune to that. And then I was also taking piano lessons. And when you take piano lessons, they're not teaching you jazz and blues. You're playing the classicals. You're playing the classics. The Bach, Matthews, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff. You're playing the classics and doing those piano finger exercises. So my ears were attuned had a different intonation in terms of what I was attracted to. My attraction was to that. And then this was pre-Motown. So Motown came along. When Motown did come along and they started putting out really great music, the Smokey Robinson and Marvin Gaye and people like that, and Martha Reeves and the Supremes, and the music got better. I thought the R&B music got better. And then of course they hired some of the arrangers they had were jazz musicians, by the way, like Paul Reiser and people like that. They were jazz musicians, but they adapted themselves to do the R&B work because that's, like I said, that's where they were getting paid.
Well, now, given that you were from Detroit, many people might have thought that you would end up at Motown because you were a child prodigy and Berry Gordy Jr. really wanted you, but you have your mother to thank for not going to Motown, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Here is the big question, and I've thought about this a lot, and I'm going to give you my opinion, but first I want to know from you, looking back, both financially and artistically, was your mother correct to stop you from joining Motown?
There was no Motown at the time. Berry hadn't formed Motown yet. I was 14 years old. We're talking about 1957-ish, okay? And there was no he hadn't formed Motown yet. So she had nobody had an idea, unless they were some kind of a psychic or something, or prophet, that what was going to happen in the future with Berry and Motown. But Berry was like a lot of good people that I encountered who were striving to have success as songwriters and hit makers, and they were talented. Berry was just the one that was the anointed one. I have to use the word anointed to be who he is because he worked hard. He was a workaholic and he was a drill master. And I did work with Berry. Berry wrote 4 songs for me back when I was 14, and we recorded them at a studio in Detroit called United Sound. And it was on the same West Grand Boulevard, the same street that Hitsville, the original Hitsville studio, is located. Matter of fact, just almost in the same block. We recorded those songs, and Berry took the songs we went to New York with the songs, and Berry had a meeting with Morris Levy of Roulette Records. And then when we came back, Berry arranged to have a couple of days later, he sat down with my mother for a meeting. He says, I want to manage Freda. And they went back and forth and back and forth. And my mother would say, okay, this is what you want, Berry. You want this percentage to manage my daughter. And the agent gets this percentage, and who pays for what? Berry said, well, your daughter would have to pay for it. It comes out of your daughter's salary. Oh, my mother just didn't. My mother, they just had differences in negotiating, and Berry wouldn't budge, and my mother wouldn't budge. So that was it. That was it. And then the second time it almost happened. This time I was in my 20s, and I was a professional, and I was working. I was working and making appearances on the Tonight Show and everything like that. And I encountered Berry in England, in Manchester. And he was traveling with the Motor City Review. We're talking the year of 1965. He said, Freda, when you come home to Detroit, give me a call. Maybe we can do something. Well, I did that when I got back. And he mailed a contract to my house, and we looked it over, and my mother looked it over. And we had a neighbor who was an attorney, and who was a very good attorney, by the way. His name was Allen Early Jr. He was well known in Detroit. And he looked at it because he was good friends with my parents. And he said, well, let's change a couple of things, because that's what a contract is for, right? Negotiating.
Right.
So we kind of just changed a little here, a little there, and that was it. Nothing drastic. We send it back, get a call from Berry. He says, look, we can't do business, but we can stay friends. And that was it.
Well, I think you were actually fortunate. I've really thought about it a lot because I followed your career. You know, eventually, the only woman Berry Gordy Jr. was really interested in promoting was Diana Ross. And I think you would have been buried at Motown. I think it was really good that you didn't go there, for whatever it's worth.
Well, you know what? Thank you for your opinion, because I agree, absolutely. And I'll tell you, my reading on it is that had I gone, kowtowed and gone with him, at that time, he was well on his way in seeing where he was going with Diana. He was well on his way in putting his his, let's say, his money
Focus.
behind Diana and his muscle behind Diana there, and he would have had to do something with me. So I would have probably wound up leaving them anyway, because I would have seen that I was being, mistreated or overlooked or whatever. And there would have been some kind of a fight or a conflict, most definitely. And being that I was already a solo artist, I was not in a group. I was a solo artist. I think he saw for a moment, like, maybe it's not such a good idea to bring Freda over here, because I won't be able to do right by her. That's how I felt.
I really agree with that. Now, a lot of people may not know that your sister, Sherry Payne, was a member of the Supremes from 1973 to 1977. So you definitely have a Motown family connection there.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? To this day, Barry loves me. He respects me. He considers me family, and for some reason, I swear, no matter where I go, especially when I work in the UK, most people always associate me with Motown. They'll say, Freda Payne, Motown artist, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not a Motown artist. But you know what the connection is? When I recorded Band of Gold, when I signed with Invictus Records, Invictus was headed and run by Holland-Dozier and Holland, which was Eddie and Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, and they were the golden boys of Motown. They were the ones that wrote and produced the main classic hits for the Supremes, for the Four Tops, for Martha Reeves, and the Vandellas and all of them. And so, I in a way, I felt like I was back with Motown when I got with Holland-Dozier and Holland.
I know that they did create their own record label called Invictus. What made you decide to join their label?
Well, here's what happened. I went to New York when I turned 18. I graduated from high school when I was 16. And I decided, well, I'm going to New York to seek my fame and fortune. And by the time I was 19, I was able to land a record deal with ABC Paramount. And then I did a single with that label. And then they wanted me to do an album on their jazz label, which was Impulse. Being on Impulse was like being on Blue Note or Verve, which is strictly jazz. So anyway, I was living in New York. This was 1968. And I was living in a high-rise apartment complex called Central Park West. And I get a call from a lady who was also a singer by the name of Tamiko Jones, who lived in the next high-rise next to mine. And she said, Freda, guess who's here visiting me from Detroit? And I said, who? She said, Brian Holland. And he says he knows you. I said, he knows me? We went to high school together. So anyway, Brian gets on the phone and says, Freda, how you doing? What's going on? Are you busy? Why don't you come by? I want to see you. So I walked over there, and Brian started, asking me a lot of questions, and I hadn't seen him in years, and he had become famous, Holland-Dozier and Holland with Motown, with all these hit records. And so he said, Freda, what are you doing? Are you on a label now? I said, I just got released from Paramount, from ABC Records. And then he said, okay, and are you being managed by anyone? I said, well, I just had a contract with Joe Scandori, who was my manager for 5 years. I said, and I just moved away from that relationship. So I'm not being managed at the moment, at that time. So he said, well, I'd like to have you come with us. He said, I'm going to call my brother Eddie. And he called Eddie, and Eddie got me on the phone, and he said, Freda, I want to fly you in. We want to talk business. And so, are you interested? I said, sure. So they flew me back to Detroit, and we sat down and talked. And next thing, I signed a contract with them. And this time I didn't question anything.
Well, when you first heard Band of Gold, could you tell right away that it would become such a massive hit and remain just as popular 50 years later?
No idea. I had no inkling. First of all, I didn't know it was going to be a hit when I was in the studio recording it. It wasn't like, oh, this song is going to be a hit. I can tell. I couldn't tell. To me, I thought everything I recorded was good. Like they were all good. And here's another thing, being that I was more like a jazz singer, and also I had done Broadway. And so I did a lot of, I mean, I was sort of like almost like a legit, like a Broadway cabaret type singer. I was Leslie Uggams' understudy in Hallelujah Baby. And I was the only understudy to ever go on and do the show. And I did it 5 times on Broadway in a lead role. So that says a lot. That proves something.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was in 1967 into 68. So I kind of like felt like, oh, wow, I can't use my style. I'm going to have to sing the way they want me to sing. So I decided I would listen and take direction to the nth degree of whatever they said to do. They said, okay, we don't want you to do any improvisation here. We don't want any jazz. We want you to sing a certain way, and I did it. I just followed direction, like being coached or something like that. And that's what I did.
Well, it was pure magic. And then I always wanted to ask you, in 1986, you recorded a remake of Band of Gold with Belinda Carlisle. What made you do that?
I got a call from a guy by the name of Ron Stone. Ron Stone was Belinda's manager at the time. And he said, Belinda wants to record, do a cover on your tune, Band of Gold. And we would like to invite you to be, if you would be so inclined, to come and sing with Belinda, like a, sort of like background, or do it like sing it together. And I said, oh, well, why not? The Bangles, they were big. I said, that group was big and they're like big pop artists. I said, that's not going to hurt me any. So I did, and it turned out great. We wound up doing a special on Cinemax called Legendary Ladies of Rock. And it was like, I think Grace Slick, hosted by Grace Slick. And oh my God, a lot of the R&B artists and rock artists wanted. It was Mary Wells, Martha Reeves, Brenda and I did our song together.
Well, that version was really great. And then I have to tell you, in 2009, you appeared on American Idol and sang Band of Gold, and the crowd went absolutely wild. It was unforgettable. That must have been quite a moment for you, Freda, to see that your song from 1970 is still so beloved.
I know. I remember how that happened. I had just come from the UK, from London Heathrow. I was on the plane and we landed at LAX, and I turned my phone on, and one of my agents, a guy named Steve Ford, he had texted me, and then I called him. He said, Freda, I just got you and Thelma Houston booked on American Idol. They wanted to do a special, like a disco night. And so they said, well, we'd love to have Freda and Thelma Houston, and also KC and the Sunshine Band. And that's what happened. That's how that all came about.
I absolutely loved it. I'll never forget it. And then your second gold record from 1971 was the Vietnam War protest song, Bring the Boys Home. That song became the anthem for an entire movement. You must be so proud of that, Freda.
Oh, God, I am. Every time somebody, especially Vietnam veterans who come to me personally, walk up to me and they say, I just want to thank you for your song, Bring the Boys Home. If it wasn't for that song, I don't know how I would have made it. They said that song helped them to get through. And here's the irony of it. When that song was released back in 71, do you know that we got the record company, not me personally, but it might as well have been me personally. They sent a telegram to Invictus Records, and it was from Washington, D.C., and it stated that this song, Bring the Boys Home, will not be played in South Vietnam because it's giving aid and comfort to the enemy. And the thing is that, how is it that so many soldiers have said this song is what helped them get through? It was the opposite. the song was giving aid and comfort to the American soldiers.
It sure was. And to everybody at home that was in such distress and such turmoil, your song helped us get through that war.
That's right. I mean, you can call me, was it Tokyo Rose if you want, but you don't remember that Tokyo Rose? Did you ever hear that term?
Yes, I did, but you are anything but. You are a national hero as far as I'm concerned. And then in the late 70s, you recorded 3 disco albums and you had a hit with the song Love Magnet. Your
Oh,
voice,
yeah.
your voice, Freda, it lent itself so well to disco music, but it was such a departure from your jazz roots. To me, those disco albums, which I still play, they demonstrate what an amazingly versatile singer you are.
Yeah, well, like they say, you gotta have more than one thing to do. You just can't sing one. I don't believe you should sing just one style. Some people have made big careers and have become successful singing in one style, and that's God bless them. And I can name one artist like a Sade. She sings in one style, but she's been a tremendous success. It's been a blessing for her. So it's just that maybe I don't know if it's a good thing for me to sing too many different styles because people get confused.
Well, people that are real fans are just soaking it up. I'll tell you, one of my all-time favorite albums is from 1996, An Evening with Freda Payne live in concert. And it featured
Oh,
your sister Sherry on background vocals. And you did 2 duets with Sherry on your Christmas album, O Little Town of
yes.
Bethlehem and Silver Bells. And your voices blend so well together. I hope you record more songs with her. The two of you are like magic.
Oh, wow. Well, that's my sister, and I guess our voices, we have different, our voices are a little different, but her voice is wonderful. She has one of those melodic, very smooth, like honey. It's like honey. Sherry has a very wonderful voice. She's a very good singer. Oh my God, you're really into my music. You have named some of the key albums that I've recorded that sort of stand out as far as my career is concerned.
Oh, I
She
am a
is.
huge, huge fan of yours, Miss Freda Payne.
Oh, thank
Now,
you so much.
there was a time you were pursuing a film career. You were in Private Obsession, Ragdoll, Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps, and Fire and Ice. I've always wished they could have found a movie musical for you to do, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I would love to do that. Well, I'm really kind of like thinking that one day I will be doing Ella Fitzgerald, First Lady of Song. I'll be doing a movie about Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh,
But
Frida, you're
I would
giving me
love that.
goosebumps.
I've done more than just those movies you mentioned. I've done Cordially Invited. That was another film I did. And I did a movie where it just went straight to video, but it was from a play that Donald B. Welch wrote and produced and directed. And it was called The Divorce. And another one, it was called, this wasn't done into a movie, but it was a play. It was called A Change Is Gonna Come.
Well, that would be an amazing movie too.
And I did another movie called Kinky. That was about 3 or 4 years ago. But that was just a small vignette. It wasn't like much of a part at all.
And you've also had a very impressive theatrical career. As you mentioned, 1967, you understudied Leslie Uggams on Broadway and you performed the show 5 times. You did a show called Blues in the Night.
Oh yeah,
You did a show called Love and Pain with Darlene Love. And of
right.
course, there's your amazing show, which you still do, Ella, First Lady of Song. Do you have to
Ella Fitzgerald.
do you have to pinch yourself when you're on the stage singing the songs of your childhood idol, Ella Fitzgerald?
Yes. And you know who else? There's another show, and that is Duke Ellington's Sophisticated Ladies. I did
Yes.
that. I've done 8 companies of Duke Ellington's Sophisticated Ladies. Over a period of over 20 years, 8 companies. And it all started, the first one was in 1982. I did the Las Vegas company at the Desert Inn, 8 months. And then I did a national tour company in 85. And then I did another one another one I did the Sacramento Civic Light Opera Company. And then I did then I did a company in Oslo, Norway. And then I did another company in Italy. And then I get another company that was also in the United States where we just did, it was like the state of Texas where we did Dallas and Houston. That was it. But
where do you get
I've done-
all the energy? You've never stopped working in like 6 decades.
That's right. I don't know. I just keep going. You know, it's sort of like, hey, as long as I'm not debilitated or handicapped, you know, I can do it. Of course, last year I had a knee replacement, and things like that happen to people in our age group.
Yeah,
You know, people-
your age group is about 45.
Oh no, darling, I'm in my late 70s.
It sure doesn't show. I want to ask you, in 2011, you recorded a duet with Sir Cliff Richard called Saving a Life. Saving a Life. And you went on tour with him in the UK. What was that experience like?
It was phenomenal. It was one of the best tours I've ever been on in my entire career, bar none, especially in the UK. This guy travels first class all the way. You know, I have no complaints. And on top of that, he's one of the sweetest persons you'll ever want to meet. He's a gentleman, and he's a polite person. He's talented and
Professional?
And professional, of course, professional and generous. He's a great guy to work with. And I loved working on that show. I loved being on tour with him. I really did. It was like I said, he knows how to do it right. First class all the way.
Well, that's what you deserve, Miss Freda Payne.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you about the new album, Let There Be Love. It's your first album in 6 years. You've gone back to your jazz roots. I have to tell you, I've been listening to it all day. I love it. I want to know what it was like to record in the legendary Studio A at Capitol Records.
Oh my God, it was magic. All I can say, it was magic. It was on a Sunday, and 18-piece orchestra. We dubbed in the strings later, but it was an 18-piece orchestra, and the musicians were top notch.
It sure sounds like it.
Oh yeah. My producer is Rodrigo Rios. He's from Brazil. Rodrigo brought this whole concept and the idea to me to do this. And then James Michael Getz is the person who became our executive producer. And then also I have producer credits. I'm like a co-producer as well, because I had a lot of input as well. It was all day long, started at 9 o'clock in the morning, actually maybe 8 for the musicians, and then 9. I got there about 9:30. Our first artist who walked in to do his duet with me was Kenny Lattimore. Yeah. And we did Let There Be Love. That's the title of the album, Let There Be Love. Then after he left, and we had a little break, a little hour break, and then in walks Johnny Mathis.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, this heaven is opening up.
It must have been a dream come true for you. I mean, the rendition you do of They Can't Take That Away From Me is absolute magic. And I'll tell you why. There's something very special that you and Johnny Mathis have in common. Your voices have simply not aged. You sing as well as you did 50 years ago. I actually think it's miraculous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, don't you?
You know what? Because of this whole year this past year of not having that much work because of the pandemic, I noticed that if you don't, like they say, if you don't use it, you lose it. I noticed that when you don't sing for a long time, your voice gets it's not as flexible or doesn't sound as good. So I got to start singing more often, just singing around the house or vocalizing, go do my vocalizing. And Johnny sounded very well. Matter of fact, when he arrived at the studio at Capitol, he had come right from the golf course. Can you believe it?
Really? Wow. Isn't he in his mid-80s?
He's in his mid-80s, correct.
Well, The Voice, I tell you, I've been playing that album. I mean, you've mentioned Kurt Elling, there's Kenny Lattimore, Dee Dee
Dee Dee
Bridgewater.
Bridgewater and Dee Dee came after Johnny, and she stayed over because it was so nice that I guess she felt like this is the place to be now, you know.
Well,
And
I
she had just
understand that except for Kurt Elling, everybody recorded with you in the studio at the same
yes,
time.
yes. Kurt could not be in LA at that time. And I think he was in New York, and then I think he wound up doing his part. It was virtual, and he was in Chicago. He did his in Chicago in a studio that he was in.
So I have to ask you, I hear there's a rumor, Frida, that you're writing a memoir.
Yes, it's just about finished. I think it's going to be ready to come out. We're talking about October the 19th.
Well,
Yeah.
are there things in the memoir that are going to surprise us?
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some dirt.
Are there things about Freda Payne that the public has misunderstood?
I'm I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, I'm not exactly a goody two shoes. I'll put it that way.
Well,
Some
whatever you've
people,
been, you look and sound so fabulous. Just keep doing it, girl.
I will.
Now, I hope you will come back to our show, Frida, when the book comes out. I would so love to help you promote it.
Oh, Harvey, please ask me back. I would love to do that. So
Now,
I
if
can
you,
keep doing what I'm doing.
oh, yes, if you could go back and talk to the 28-year-old Freda Payne in 1970 when Band of Gold was a #1 hit, what would you say to her?
Ah, girl, have a little bit more patience with people. Don't when when you got your head in the lion's mouth, don't jerk it out. Slowly pull it out.
Well, what if the lion bites?
Well, the lion bites. Well, that's just something I can't even speak on. If the lion bites, then you're in big trouble. But I would just tell myself to be a little bit more wise, and and what I say, and how I react, and so forth and so on, and not to let's say maybe try to find maybe better people to associate myself to surround myself with, people who have so more like a way of living that is a little bit more um
Wholesome?
wholesome. That's a good word to use, a little bit more wholesome and clean living. Because sometimes when you're starting to rise in the business and you're young, you attract a lot of the wrong people.
Yeah.
And they're attracted to you. They're attracted to your light. It's like when you have that, when it's happening for you, you're like a beam. You're glowing. You have a lot of energy around you, and people see that, and they want to be a part of it, and they want to see what they can do to enhance themselves, or they want to see if they can get some of that for themselves, but it's at your expense.
And they can be like vampires that are just draining you dry.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think that's such good advice, Frida, for anybody that's on their way up, to really be mindful of who is surrounding you and what is their agenda.
Right, right. It's like some of the wrong people. You hear about people, artists who get into drugs, and a lot of it has to do with the people that they're associating with, the people that come backstage and say, "Hey, wow, you're great. You're like the best thing going. Like, why don't you try this?" You know what I mean? It's coming up when you're young, and you want to sort of like you want to be nice to everybody. You don't want to turn anybody off. So in a way, it's good to have a chaperone. And I'll tell you another thing, and I got to give Barry credit. Barry was always taking care of his girls, the Supremes, and he always made sure he was always keeping the bad elements away from them as much as he could. And I give him credit for that.
And yet it didn't always work. When you look at Florence, she just fell apart.
She did, because he stopped taking care of her. You know, she
Yeah.
did her own thing. Oh, and I have to say, we lost
Mary.
recently Mary Wilson. Mary and I had become very good friends, and her passing just blew me. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was
so
just
sudden.
sudden and unexpected, totally unexpected. Almost you didn't want to accept it. It was like, this is not happening. This can't, not Mary.
Yeah, that was a terrible, terrible loss. But on a happier note, I was talking to my friend Ruta Lee today, and
Yes.
she told me that on December the 5th, you are going to be the honoree at the Thalians Gala in Hollywood. And I want to congratulate you in advance for all of the community service you've done and all of the joy that you've brought to so many millions of people for 60 years.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And I love Ruta Lee. She is indeed she's a glamorous lady.
And
And
what a heart of
lady.
gold. What a
And
heart of gold.
Yes.
Well, Freda, I must tell you, it's been a real honor to meet you and to have you on our show. Your voice is part of the soundtrack of our lives, and your musical choices in your performances and on your albums, you bring so much joy to your fans. Congratulations on this beautiful new album. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show.
Oh, thank you. You are so welcome. And I'm looking forward to being on your show again.
Oh, for sure. When that book comes out, I'm going to be knocking on your door.
All right.
Our guest has been music legend Freda Payne. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Remember to subscribe to the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. And be sure to check out more great interviews with Harvey Brownstone on harveybrownstoneinterviews.com.